The mid-2010s hypebeast era was a very strange time for fashion, especially looking back on it now. On the one hand, it's remembered as this gaudy, obnoxious, and tasteless time in fashion where hordes of people would do the most insane things just to get their hands on a white t-shirt with a simple logo on it. Kids would even queue up outside streetwear stores overnight, and some people would even capitalize on the hype by reselling clothes for crazy prices the very same day they dropped. This guy was even doing the hypebeast equivalent of G-checking random people, and even started a real fight to somehow prove Bape was better than Supreme. Many people view this era as a period of time centered around greed and shameless displays of wealth rather than actual fashion. However, surprisingly, many people are still very nostalgic for this time and remember it very fondly. It was a much simpler time, and it was exciting queuing for a streetwear drop with your friends and other like-minded streetwear fiends, and the community aspect didn't stop there. Once you got home, you could hop on the Basement Facebook group or any other hypebeast online community to share your "what did you wear today" post, or sell the clothes you bought with the birthday money from your nan, and double your investment overnight to fund the upcoming clothing release that you were so excited for. They say it's been downhill since the summer of 2016, and that was probably the last time you got excited for a Supreme drop. Gone are the days when one could indulge in rampant consumerism and get a real in-person community experience as a byproduct. Getting a £6.50 piss-weak matcha slop drink from a chain coffee shop and taking some fit pics just doesn't hit the same as sitting out in a camping chair on the streets of Soho at 4 AM with nothing but your by any means necessary Supreme and North Face collab jacket to shelter you from the torrential rain. While I personally never queued for a Supreme or Palace drop in those days, I definitely have very fond memories of that whole era. Like most 20-something-year-old male fashion content creators on the internet, the 2013 to 2018 streetwear craze was my introduction to fashion. I think everyone's pretty familiar with how hypebeast streetwear culture came to be, but what happened after? Where did all the hypebeasts go? It felt like one day it was omnipresent and inescapable, and then the next day it was just gone. Where are all the hypebeasts today? Well, it all started in the late 2010s when hypebeast culture got overhyped and the mainstream started taking notice, with mainstream high-end and luxury brands scrambling to capitalize on the streetwear mania. I think the Supreme collaboration with Louis Vuitton in 2017 marked the start of this, with Virgil Abloh becoming the artistic director for menswear at Louis Vuitton in 2018 being the final nail in the coffin. Hey, hold your horses. I'm not saying that what Virgil did at Louis Vuitton killed streetwear or hypebeast culture in the 2010s or anything like that. This is not a critique of Virgil. Don't worry, that comes later in the video. I just think that this was the moment that signaled a cultural shift where the wider luxury fashion industry went all in on the streetwear craze, and in doing so made it lose its edge. If the children of multi-millionaire Middle Eastern oil tycoons are dressing like the kids on the streets of London or New York, then it's probably not that cutting edge anymore. Virgil himself even said this in a 2019 interview with Dazed in response to the question, "What do you think will happen to the idea of streetwear in the 2020s? Wow, I would definitely say it's gonna die, you know, like its time will be up. In my mind, how many more t-shirts can we own? How many more hoodies? How many sneakers? I think that we're gonna hit this really awesome state of expressing your knowledge and personal style with vintage. There are so many clothes that are cool that are in vintage shops, and it's just about wearing them. I think that fashion is gonna go away from buying a box fresh something. It'll be like, hey, I'm gonna go into my archive." Yeah, he pretty much predicted the next 5 years of online fashion culture almost perfectly. Archive fashion started to become popular at the start of the 2020s with the rise of curated shops on social media such as Constant Practice, as well as it becoming a form of clout to be knowledgeable about fashion history and culture and conveying that through a collection of rare and old vintage designer pieces. And while vintage and thrifting has always been popular, the 2020s saw it become some sort of fucking competitive sport. Going into the 2020s, there was still a market for hypebeast clothes, and the sneaker side of things was definitely still at full steam, but in general, streetwear was moving on from being synonymous with hypebeast culture. If you actually care about fashion and not just signaling wealth with flashy logos, then just like Virgil said, there are only so many t-shirts, hoodies, and sneakers. This is when I think streetwear got Pinterestified and diversified. What I mean by this is that before the mid-2010s, the idea of styling at the height of hypebeast fashion was pretty non-existent. You might disagree with me and think that your outfit from 2016, where you combined a Supreme BOGO t-shirt, some ripped jeans and Yeezys, was a very well thought out stylistic expression of your individuality or whatever, but at least the way I remembered that era is that the most revered outfits were either ones made up of matching clothes from the same drop, you know, Gully Guy Leo core, or just piling on as much expensive loud clothes as possible. I mean, there was that extremely popular How Much Is Your Outfit series by Unknown Vlogs, which encapsulates this attitude. By the start of the 2020s, I think people got a bit sick of just having all the gear and no idea, and wanted their outfits to say a little more than just I have something you don't, or I have more money than you. This is around the time I think hypebeasts started to diversify into different areas of fashion. Some people switched out the Bape hoodies for Stussy 8-ball fleeces and started to favour Birkenstock Bostons over Yeezys, and essentially began TikTok micro trend hopping. But now at least there was some attempt to style an outfit, even if it was just the sandwich method or exclusively wearing earth tones. Some people went into the Uniqlo super minimal genre, while others were big into the vintage or workwear stuff, and some went into the archive designer scene that was picking up pace at the time. There was also Gorpcore, and then there was the Y2K revival, which was very prevalent in the streetwear scene. COVID and the rise of TikTok definitely had a part to play in this, with everyone having more time to look at clothes online rather than going out and wearing them. For the most part, all people could do was consume media and get into hobbies, so having good taste or being able to curate cool things became far more culturally valuable than simply having the most hyped item from the most recent drop. This is also where I think it became cool to not only have cool clothes, but also to be interested and knowledgeable about fashion, and in general this period is where a lot of new people got into fashion, especially for the male gender. In fact, I think the YouTube series PAQ not only got a lot of people into fashion, but also showed a lot of hypebeasts the more interesting and creative sides of being interested in clothes, as it sort of bridged the gap between the hypebeast era and the more diverse and chronically online era in terms of both when the show was running and the sort of stuff they covered. Each of the four hosts had very different styles and tastes in fashion, and that combined with their humour and on-camera chemistry made for such a good and unreplicable YouTube series. I don't think I need to glaze PAQ any more than this, as I assume most people watching this used to watch the show too. It's a shame it ended in the way it did, but I also hope the boys are doing well for themselves nowadays. If mid to late 2010s streetwear was defined by hypebeast culture, then I think early 2020s streetwear is defined by the Instagram brand apocalypse. Out of nowhere, everyone suddenly had a clothing brand that sold graphic t-shirts, hoodies, and wide-fitting joggers. However, for the most part, these brand owners are not the kind of people who care about the works of, say, Rei Kawakubo. If you say McQueen to these kinds of fashion designers, their first thought is going to be this guy, not this guy. These sorts of brand owners come more from the hustle culture side of the internet, where they take the sacred and holy practice of drop shipping and apply it to streetwear. You know, the types of individuals who talk about escaping the matrix, which is basically a substitute phrase for saying they are unhappy with being negatively affected by capitalism. But unfortunately, these so-called temporarily embarrassed future billionaires double down on their individualistic mindsets and instead decide to utilize the system that they lack the self-awareness to realize they are actually critical of and have been exploited by. Ah yes, you really showed the Matrix who's boss by buying a dropshipping course and then middlemanning cheap dogshit quality clothes made in unethical conditions by workers in less developed countries to make your streetwear brand that will lose all future customers and die after the first people to receive your products find the Alibaba receipts and call you out on TikTok. This is why so much online content about running a clothing brand seems to focus purely on profit and not on making cool and innovative clothes. You could also argue that Virgil Abloh's free game guide to starting a clothing brand document and his notorious design principles are partly to blame for the Instagram brand apocalypse too, or rather how mainstream culture mythologized these two resources. Virgil was a trailblazer in the fashion industry. He achieved so much without a traditional education in fashion while being very willing to share his wisdom and approach to creativity. He became a role model to so many people, and rightfully so. He definitely wanted to broadcast the message, if I can do it, so can you, but what I don't think he accounted for is people who only wanted to replicate his success for money rather than actually caring about art or fashion. This is why I am somewhat critical of the free game document, because realistically, none of the information provided goes beyond what you could yield from 20 minutes of Googling or watching YouTube videos. You might say, well, this sort of information isn't obvious to everyone. Novices need to be shown the basics, but I'm sorry, if you don't have the drive and appetite to learn without it being served on a plate for you, or kind of just know these things already as a byproduct of being a creative person, then in my opinion, you probably shouldn't be starting a clothing brand. If you need to be introduced to what the Adobe suite is, then it's more likely that you don't have a genuine creative vision for a fashion brand, and then you'd just be creating meaningless clothes for the sake of it or simply for monetary gain, which just contributes to the already bad sustainability and ethical issues within the fashion industry. As for his design principles, when they got sensationalized and shared all around the internet, people just hyper-focused on the 3% rule and misinterpreted it to just mean change anything by 3% and it must be good because Virgil said so. If your brand's 3% difference is that you choose a different word to put on your Y2K style puff print logo hoodie compared to the hundreds of other Alibaba powered Instagram slop brands making the same hoodie, then I'm sorry to break it to you, but I don't think you're going to be the next creative director at Louis Vuitton. May I remind you of Virgil's design principle number 6, a societal commentary, has a reason to exist now. We have enough of everything. What intentionality are you bringing for your work to exist now? Yeah, flames and skulls on a hoodie. That's deep, man. We really live in a society. What's that guy called again? George Orwell. Yeah, he'd be proud of you. Also, just a quick FYI, I'm not trying to shit on Virgil and be a contrarian. I have so much admiration and respect for him. He created and achieved so much in his lifetime and was truly in a league of his own. I understand that his providing the resource that I've critiqued was to try, quote, make a dent in the global disparities that exist, which is a sentiment I completely agree with, and he also set up the Postmodern Scholarship Fund, which is not only still running but has expanded since his tragic passing in 2021. He's one of the few artists of the caliber to just be known for creativity rather than a single art form. Basically, he's firmly sat right next to Rick Rubin in the Dream Blunt rotations of people who put multidisciplinary creative in their Instagram bios. So yeah, again, I'm not saying Virgil ruined streetwear or anything like that, and the issue isn't due to his actions but more how people reacted to the resources he provided. But maybe I've just made a connection from this to the Instagram brand apocalypse when really it's just a coincidence. So it would be interesting to see what you guys think in the comments. You might be thinking that people who are actually into fashion never really fell for this wave of Instagram brand slop, as most of the designs were pretty tasteless and on the types of clothing that people already had lots of. But unfortunately, less blatant but still dodgy and kind of greedy practices have become very commonplace for slightly higher tier independent brands. They are still referred to as Instagram brands as they are usually owned by fashion influencers or content creators, but I'm talking about the ones that actually do cut and sewn products and aren't just printing on blanks or using a design interface that looks like this. The negatives aren't as bad as finding Alibaba receipts in your order, but now it's normal for someone to buy, say, some trendy wide baggy Selvedge Denim from some TikToker's brand on pre-order, thinking you'll get them next month. 4 months later, they finally arrive and they are paper-thin, fast fashion quality jeans. You might as well buy from Jaded London at this point. At least you're getting one of the few benefits of fast fashion, being that you receive the item quicker than 4 months. I was unfortunately a victim of something like this a few years ago, where I bought a pair of jeans for around £100 that took 4 months to arrive. The quality was dog shit, and I found out that's because the denim was made with fucking polyester. Even H&M jeans that go for £30 have denim that is 100% cotton. Needless to say, them bitches went straight to Depop. The pre-order method, where brand owners get to bear zero risk and make their customers wait eons only to receive subpar products, is so common nowadays that even bigger brands like No Face Studios are pulling this same tomfoolery. I saw so many videos of people waiting months for some handcrafted, reworked 90s vintage sweatshirts, only to receive a new product, barely any distressing, with AliExpress quality, and the brand refused to accept any returns. I think the cherry on the cake of this whole situation is, all while this is happening and people are bugging out on TikTok, the owner of the brand has just been flexing his new luxury condo in Paris on Instagram. Look, if you're going to release an item of clothing on pre-order, then it has to be unique or innovative in some way and deliver on a level of quality that matches the price. A good example of this would be the Morph Mules by Rotten Closet. I think these took like 3 or 4 months to ship to those who pre-ordered, but I've only seen people completely praising them because they are unique and are of good quality with a Vibram sole. You're going to be just as excited when you get something like this 4 months later because you can't get a design like that anywhere else and the quality matches the price. You're not going to be excited after you finally receive your super baggy Selvedge jeans 3 months after you already got bored of that trend that also turn out to be 2.1 ounce denim and have a weird message on the inside tag that says "help me." Now, you might be thinking I've strayed pretty far from Hypebeast Fashion, but really we've come full circle. This is because the demand and hype surrounding these Instagram brands make up one aspect of a term that has started to be chucked around fashion social media a lot recently. That term being the modern hypebeast. By definition, hypebeast as a term doesn't directly refer to this particular style or era of fashion, and in fact, it basically means someone who buys into a lot of trends and usually uses this to flaunt their wealth or status. While that is technically the definition, it's mainly being used to refer to the people who used to dress in full off-white, Supreme, Bape, etc. from around the mid to late 2010s, so the term has pretty much died out in most forms of modern fashion discourse. However, recently people started to realize that while trends have changed, a lot of people are essentially still hypebeasts, just in different clothes. I've seen the term modern hypebeast used in quite a broad and vague way on the fashion side of social media, so I'm going to break down the 3 pillars that make up this archetype. The first 2 I believe are pretty much the same as the original hypebeast, whereas the third is where I think things have changed a lot since the mid-2010s. Currently there are a lot of independent or Instagram brands that are very hyped at the moment, especially on platforms such as TikTok. Yurei, IonGaff, K2, Pinup Rags, and a bunch more, but those are just a handful of examples. This should be seen as a cool thing. People are getting excited about small, independent brands run by young people instead of massive global brands. Although it has also resulted in what many people believe to be fashion enthusiasts who buy these brands dressing in exactly the same way. Essentially just the LA fashion starter pack meme, you know, baggy raw Selvedge denim baby tee, which is a very specific style that has been very prevalent for the past year or so and doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. The people who dress like this get called modern hypebeasts in a negative way because it's seen as mindless fashion if you're spending loads of money to dress like everyone else queuing up outside SoCal matcha cafes. The same thing is also true of people who buy into more mainstream hyped brands such as Acne Studios or Chrome Hearts. If you buy into any popular or trendy brand purely to dress like a stereotypical archetype, then you are seen as a modern hypebeast basically. Pillar 2. Flexing wealth. While this is present in most genres of fashion to some degree, this was one of the key aspects of traditional hypebeast fashion. But nowadays these items aren't limited in the way they were back in the peak of 2010's hypebeast fashion. Instead of flexing a box logo that resells for £500, people now flex Acne Studio jeans that cost £500 at retail. The only thing exclusive about these clothes is the initial retail price rather than the resale value. Back in the day, you could queue up overnight and snag a hyped item for a reasonable price and it would still be a money flex because of the resale value, but now that's far less relevant to modern fashion. If this was the 3 pillars of the original hypebeast, then the final one would be exclusivity, but as I've just said, that doesn't really exist in the same way anymore. This is where the modern hypebeast is different, because now you can't queue up overnight or online bot your way into getting your hands on exclusive items. People need a new way to feel more superior than other fashion enjoyers. The third pillar of the modern hypebeast is pseudo-intellectualism and elitism. As already mentioned, it became cool to be knowledgeable and cultured regarding fashion during the 2020s. Now we are at a point where people are dressing very similarly with these extremely popular hyped items, but some individuals feel as if they are better than their clones, because they have made a few green screen TikTok videos where they regurgitate parts of a long form video essay they saw on YouTube and now believe they are a fashion journalist. I swear to God, if I see one more person try to explain to me what Trump lawyers on Instagram Reels while holding up a pair of Acne Studios canvas trousers they bought for £500, I'm going to fucking lose my bloody marbles. At least back in the hypebeast days, no one thought they were stylistically unique for wearing trendy clothes. If anything, people wanted to dress like other hypebeasts so they could be a part of the small group who had the hyped items. So many fashion trends nowadays are fueled by nostalgia. We've already seen Y2K come back into fashion. Now people are talking about indie sleeves and the Hedi Slimane look coming back. Some people are already trying to get ahead of the curve and dressing like the swag era too. So naturally, it will get to the point where people will be expecting the comeback of prime hypebeast fashion. In fact, I think we're already starting to see the return of classic hypebeast Supreme clothes becoming cool again. Oxford graduate Whitey has been wearing the box logo hoodies, Chris Hine Jr. has been wearing box logos 5-panel hats among other pieces, and just the other day I saw a video of Jacob Wallace wearing the iconic yes triple box logo. I do think the hypebeast revival is inevitable, and I don't think this will be done in an ironic way, which given the reputation of prime hypebeast fashion, that would be the obvious assumption. I think it will be interpreted in a way that fits into modern style sensibilities, and ignoring stuff like this, brands like Supreme, Palace and Bape have always come out with some really cool and high quality pieces. Given how many clothes these brands have released over the years, I think we will see people wearing the classic and iconic pieces like box logos at first, but I also think that given how valued it is to be knowledgeable, cultured and able to curate within the modern fashion zeitgeist, people will start collecting and valuing more overlooked pieces that were released throughout the 2010s. I think this will especially apply to the collaborative stuff. A lot of these were done with high fashion brands or designers from that time period, which are now still just as popular and relevant. What's great about these collabs is that they allow you to buy into a designer that might otherwise be inaccessible to you in either price or style ecosystem. Oh, you like Comme des Garçons in theory, but don't really want to walk around your small town dressed like this? Well, you can just get the slightly diluted and cheaper version instead. I think this is the first time I've ever made a trend prediction of sorts on this channel, so it will be funny to see how well or poorly this ages in a few years. But yeah, I'm just saying this might be a good time to go buy all your childhood grails while they're still cheap. If Japanese mall brands like Tornado Mart have been accepted into the archive fashion canon, then why can't a brand like Supreme get a similar treatment? Before we end the video, I just wanted to mention how a lot of things that were born or popularized out of the hypebeast era never really went away, especially within streetwear. For example, look at the brand Cortez, which has found mainstream success for years now, is still relevant while basically just being a UK version of Supreme with some crazy marketing tactics. I am completely out of touch with what kids and teenagers are valuing for fashion nowadays, but I must admit it did bring a nostalgic tear to my eye seeing these hordes of children going absolutely berserk in Soho for this streetwear brand Up in Flames' clothing drop. Nature is healing. Prime in-person streetwear mania is finally back.